Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the 19th of September, and we're going to do a special 2-hour broadcast with my very special guest, Tom Horn, that will be played the coming Mondays. Now, if you're listening to this in real time, you will get part 1 tonight, and then a week from tonight, you'll get part 2. Tom Horn and I are going to talk about the fallen angel agenda, the alien agenda, the great deception, and where we're at in this whole thing, because daily the revelations coming forth are preparing the earth for the onslaught of the aliens who are going to be billed as our Redeemer is getting more and more prevalent. We'll go immediately to my very special guest, Tom Horn. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Steve. It's great to be back on your show again.
Well, I've never been more excited about a series of interviews, Tom, than the ones we've done. This will be hours 4 and 5, and I'm going to encourage everybody that listens to this series across the world. As you know, this goes not only shortwave, but these things get downloaded and sent out, to absolutely keep these for future reference, because we're going to start out, Tom, tonight with your comments, in essence, your final comments to this series on UFOs and the deception, because you posted on your website, Raiders News, the whole, now the scientists, after decades of denial, they're saying ET is on our doorstep, the Catholic Church. The bottom line, take it from there, and then we're going to go through and lay this out, because, again, I don't believe, based on where we're at in the prophetic timeline of the living God, that there's a more important subject, because this is the great deception.
Well, and we must be really striking a nerve, Steve, because I have to tell you, I'm not sure that I've ever received more email and more feedback from people who seem to be hungry for the truth, which is actually a very positive and inspirational sign. That people are out there and they want answers, and unfortunately, I was a pastor for 25 years. Unfortunately, the churches, for the most part, are not providing any of these answers. People are hungry for it, and so, here we are. You and I are doing this, and I've found it to be extraordinary this week, how much response I've been given, and I imagine you're probably receiving the same kind of emails.
Absolutely. I'm getting emails and phone calls saying, please finish up, because we want to know, we have to know. And I think, Tom, you touched on something. For so many years, the church has been, I would say, goody two-shoes, or basically maybe illiterate and non-functional, in the sense that the classic pastors would never feel comfortable in dealing with these issues, and therefore so many Christians have gone every place. They've run to and fro trying to get the knowledge, and in the infinite mercy of the living God, in His precious time frame and time reference now, God is preparing the people of earth. He said His people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, so basically by the presence of this knowledge, I'm just really believing, Tom, that God's going to take this interview and give multiplied understanding, wisdom, knowledge, and also deliverance from the times ahead. When we get to the end of the, this 2 hours, we'll talk about what people need to do and what they can expect. But let's talk about now your take on the comments on the UFOs and deception, because even on your website, things have accelerated where you don't have to go looking for material. It just basically is there now on a feverish pitch.
Yeah, we started out this series talking about the CERN Large Hadron Super Collider, and you and I both had made note with interest that the god of destruction, Lord Shiva, is hallowed there doing the Nataraja dance of destruction and then reconstruction into something new. And you and I both had agreed that collider would not destroy the world with these, globe-gobbling black holes, but that something, in fact, might happen, that it might open a doorway, the discovery of other dimensions. Do you remember in my book, I'm not plugging my book, by the way, but do you remember in my book, The Ahriman Gate, where the scientists are doing something almost like this CERN Stargate technology when something opens, and they're looking through this opening, and far beyond this opening, they see an armada of something that I'm not sure what it is at first, but of course it turns out to be what we think of today as UFOs. And this technology right now, even our physicists are telling us that they want to peer into these other dimensions. And in the esoteric realm, you and I started to talk about the other day how that possibly this could be an invitation, if you will, for matter manipulating unknowns to come through this Stargate into our reality.
I got to share this with you, Tom. Based on the information that's out there, there's been an incident at the Hadron Super Collider 2 where, and I'll tell you point blank what my understanding of it is, is some people that are more than responsible for trying to keep the gate shut have interfered with that. I don't know if you saw that story, but they're admitting that they had an issue that's going wrong. And I can say this, if the people who are involved in that and trying to keep it closed are, if you will, people appointed by the living God to keep it closed till the last minute, we then are in the last minutes of time. And needless to say, they will succeed. And you and I are both on record saying this is not the end of the world. This is basically the portal to that which God had bound to a specific area of His creation that's soon to come upon the earth to basically wreak havoc and slaughter like no time in history. And that's what we've got to get through to these people. This isn't just Tom and Steve having a fireside chat for something to entertain. This is absolutely a warning and, if you will, a pleading for people to get right with the living God, because He's the only protection they will have when this stuff gets unleashed.
No, that's exactly right. You and I were right so far that the world didn't end last week, although the full-scale experiments, the particle collisions, haven't even really been done to full scale yet. I don't know if most people know that. I saw where they said they were drinking champagne and celebrating that it didn't create the destruction of the earth, but they really haven't done too much of anything yet. And I have to say, it's a bit unnerving, and this might have something to do with part of what you're talking about, that within hours of the first startup of the collider, they have a 30-ton transformer there, and this thing's used to power their cooling system. And, it failed. It went down. Right after they started it up, it went down, and that thing's supposed to keep it, I think, at 271 degrees Celsius, and it went down, which has to be concerning when you realize that this machine has not been turned on full steam yet, and when it is, people need to know, the physicists are saying it's going to generate the kind of heat, energy, and density that existed a trillionth of a second after the so-called Big Bang. What that means in layman's terms is that it is going to be 100,000 times hotter than the center of our sun. So the idea, Steve, that just a simple power outage can turn off the cooling system to this Stargate, I mean, this is not very reassuring at all.
So much for their fail-safe. I would say this, too. I would say that, and I want to share this, Tom, there's a reason I'm saying this, so if it seems obscure, there's a real reason. There are men and women who are basically the sons of Enoch in the sense of the classic word of, as you know, you and I are both students of the book of Enoch.
Right.
You'll share some stuff. But through the ages, there have been people raised up by the living God to deal with this. Obviously, we know the archangels, Michael, Gabriel, we know Raphael from the other writings, etc. But there are men and women who are dedicated, and just as these minor issues, see, that's what you and I are talking about. The people I'm talking about, the very mighty men and women of valor and the sons of Enoch who have made sure that this thing doesn't go online, they're being terminated. There's literally a supernatural plot to kill the people. Now, this sounds like something that you and I should be writing another book about, but given the fact that these men who believe they're God, and you and I talked about the dance of Shiva, don't you find it fascinating that they worship death? You and I have talked about that in some of our very first interviews we ever did about the Lord God of heaven gives us the book of life, and the ancients give us the book of the dead. I got news for you. I'm going to take Jesus' advice. I'm going to choose life.
All right.
But going on, now let's get into this, okay?
All right.
These guys really think they have it nailed, and you're talking about 100,000 times the temperature of the surface of the sun. If a little problem like this can bring about a major result, what can a big problem bring about?
Well, that's right, and even part of the prophecy of the apocalypse has to do with people trying to get away from the heat, that they curse God because of the heat that is coming upon them. So people need to be very careful. But I know we need to move forward. I know we have a lot of ground. You might have also seen over Raiders News Network today the lead story over there having to do with DARPA and their interest in manipulating wormhole energy. And this is directly connected, I think, at least in part to what's happening at CERN. But this article has to do with the Casimir effect, and I want to ask you in a minute if you've done shows on this before. But DARPA believes that this Casimir effect can be used to produce, I think the article called it a local mass negative region. Anyway, it means a space-time differential, if you will,